Recently I looked at my budget and realized there were so many different ways I could save myself some money. So in today's video, Ads and I are going to talk about 11 different ways we were able to save big money in our personal budgets and how you can do that as well.
G'day guys, so to kick it off I'm going to jump straight into the first one, and it might not be the biggest thing that you can do to cut back or the first thing that comes to mind, but in our world it's quite a very important thing. So I was going to say quite, but it is very important, and that's interest that you pay. Now that could be on your home loan, on your personal loan, car loan, credit card. Throughout there it's money going to someone else for debt, and we want to address that. So
it's a huge one because I recently called up the banks across the different investment properties that I own and effectively saved myself about 20,000 bucks in interest just by pulling the rates down. Now that was across my home loan, which if you have your own home, there's a huge opportunity to call your bank or talk to a broker and refinance at the moment. And then I've done the same thing in the past with credit cards where I had huge amounts of debt outstanding, you know, over 10,000 bucks at 17% a year. Changed it over to a new card that had more like a 6% a year, and I was able to get that under control. Yeah,
and you can do a lot of things. So you can balance transfer credit card debt to a 12-month, 18-month period where it's interest-free. So if you are in a position where you are getting a bit tied down by that credit card debt, move it on, get it interest-free, keep making those repayments and be very diligent about getting that back down. So once that 18-month period winds up, you don't get stuck getting charged a higher interest rate or going through that cycle again.
Another way that you can really pull back your budget, and it's not the nicest thing to talk about, but a lot of people that we know that live up here in Queensland, in Sydney and in Melbourne obviously want to live the life, and so they rent very, very expensive properties which are beautiful from a lifestyle perspective, but obviously cost them a huge amount in terms of their long-term future financially. So being realistic about your stage of life and going, do I need to pay 500 bucks or 1,000 bucks a week in rent just to have that lifestyle, or could I peel back from a 3-bedder to a 2 or a 1-bedder to sort of save myself some cash there as well?
Yeah, and like it's something that you just got to look in your own life at the moment and decide, where's my money best spent at the moment. It's not necessarily on where, say it might be your house that you might not spend as much time at as you originally thought you were going to when you did rent out that expensive property. I know I've been in that situation before myself. But I guess we'll keep moving on from there and go on to the next one, keep it sliding. So the next one is fees. Now, we're talking about institutional fees as a whole. So it could be your banks, it could be the superannuation, it could be your insurance, any of these things. It's always worth looking around, checking what your competitors can do, what else is out there. Just ask that question, have that phone call, have that conversation, and just see what they can do. Like, a lot of these companies have salesmen working for them that want your business, and they'll do their best to try and win you over. So just see what they have to offer.
If you're paying fees on your credit card, on your bank accounts, on your super effectively in some instances, and also on your home loans, then you should be really confronting those companies and pulling those things back, because they're just taking the piss when they're charging you that stuff. Another huge thing that I've saved, because I've got 3 young children, my wife, a dog and a cat, so my food bill every single week's expensive. About 18 months ago, we slid from Woolworths to buying some of our staple stuff from the farmers markets locally, fruit and veggies, as well as Aldi, from just the basic stuff and meat stuff. And I think those 2 decisions have literally taken our weekly food bill down from about 300 bucks to about 200 bucks. So that was a huge saving for us.
Yeah, definitely.
And the quality hasn't dropped in any way either. Like, I thought going to Aldi, it was cheap, but the cool thing about Aldi from my perspective is it's got to be preservative free, and it's like actually high quality food.
Yeah, I think they do great stuff, to be honest. I've shopped at Aldi for a little while since they kind of showed up in Australia. I get a bunch of items from them, not necessarily everything, but just pick and choose the right things that I'd be happy to buy from there. And like you said, you can get some great savings from that. On to the next one. So we've knocked off 4, just for a quick recap. We've got interest, rent, fees, and food. For number 5, it's still on that food path, but fast food. So we're not saying don't go out, don't go get takeaway, but perhaps just use that money that you spend on fast food, which is really quite expensive. It's hard to go to McDonald's or Hungry Jack's without spending personally $15, or if it's with like my partner, or I'm sure if it's with family, you can easily spend over $30 at one of these places. You could switch that out to spending a night out do that once a week rather than fast food twice a week, and all of a sudden you're having a beautiful dinner out and you'll have more money at the end of the week for it.
100%. Like, there's heaps of people that talk about that in terms of coffees, in terms of smoking potentially, in terms of fast food. And we're not saying go out there and do it for a health perspective. We're just saying from a financial perspective, it can make a lot of sense. Another thing that I recently did was switched energy providers. So I switched over from one of the big boys to a company called Click. It's literally saved me about 30% of the cost of my electricity bill just by moving across. So again, a lot of people have been sucked into, you know, come and work with us, and then the company's jacked the energy prices up. If you haven't looked at your energy price in the last 2 years, I can guarantee you're overpaying. And even a quick call to your current provider threatening to walk away could save you 15-20%.
Yeah, and let's be honest, that's how these large institutions work. We've touched on a few topics throughout the video already, but with your interest, your fees, now with electricity, they draw you in with a great price and a great sales pitch at the start, and it's honest, like they do offer you those great savings for that first year, but it always cuts the second year, or if it's the third year or the fourth year, there is a timeline where those companies start trying to take more money from you, and it stops being a benefit, for you staying with them. So keep your eyes out and always be ready to move to the next one. And on to keeping in line with that is it's our phone bills. So we've all been in that trap where you get to, say, a couple of months left in your 2-year phone bill, and you want that new phone or you want to upgrade, and it's just so easy to go in. They'll offer you to do it for free, but all of a sudden then you're locked in for $100 a month again for the next 2 years, which obviously there's other ways to do that these days, don't you think?
Yeah, like I just recently went from, again, one of the big boys. Like, there's pretty much 3 big providers in Australia, which everybody knows, and I bought the phone outright, which you know, was a bit expensive, but then I went to Aldi Mobile, $45 a month.
Aldi again.
Aldi again. Like, I didn't even know they did mobile. My brother-in-law put me onto it, and these guys, like, $45 a month, unlimited calls, unlimited text, ridiculous amounts of data. So instead of paying $100, $140 a month with one of the big guys, you know, I've got that owned outright. And you know, what I did before that was just roll across my old phone until it broke. Because I think, looking at like iPhones, for example, like the technology changes, and I know a lot of people want to keep up with it, but it really hasn't changed that much in the last 4 or 5 years. Like it's you know, pretty much stabilizing now.
Yeah, my problem is I break them. It's not so much upgrading to the new technology, it's just getting them to last through it, but that's obviously a case or something. So add that to my list, a phone case.
A phone case would save you about $200 a year in screen repairs.
Yeah, makes sense. So moving on, next one on the list, I think that's number 8 that we're working with now, is the gym membership. So I love going to the gym. It's a great way to, I guess, put a bit of structure into your life and your health routine, that you know you're paying, you know you're locked into going to a place, and that's where that activity is done. But let's be honest, it is quite expensive way to get exercise that you know you can get from going for a walk outside, or there's always something outdoors that you can use to try and get those same exercises that you get in the gym. It's just a matter of finding out a different way to do it.
It's weird because for the last 13 years I've paid between, you know, $500 a year to $750 a year for gym membership. I just recently went down to like Rebel and bought an entire home gym, like pull-up bar, everything I possibly needed for $700, which, you know what I mean, like that stuff's going to last me the next 5 or 10 years, and I've got a gym at home. So I never thought about it that way before, and I'm just really starting to think about this more minimalistic lifestyle, more, you know, simpler ways to do the same sort of things. And you know, across the board, if you were to just do the things we've talked about, you could probably pull 20 to 30% out of your weekly expenses just by implementing this stuff. Like, it saved me an absolute fortune.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's looking at things as a whole life cycle cost. So not just, okay, it's costing me $20 each month, or versus to buy the equipment it might cost $700. You weigh it up and you can look and then start to see, okay, in under 2 years I can spend less. 2 years worth of gym membership is less money than what you've spent on buying the equipment, and then for the next, say, 3 years from that, you don't have to replace the equipment until that 5-year mark or so. So overall, you're still ending up in a better position, and obviously you get to design your gym equipment a bit more focused. But touching on gym and subscriptions, I want to move on to the next stuff, and in this day and age, with the way the internet's working, you've got your Netflix, you've got your Audible,
your Spotify, your Stan, your
Apple
YouTube
Music.
Red. Like, there's so many different ways that you can blow cash, and if you sign up to 3 or 4 of them, which is super easy to do, all of a sudden you could be up for 40, 50 bucks a month in subscriptions, 100 bucks a month if you're on Foxtel, 150 a month, and it catches you out. So just be aware of what you need, be aware of the subscriptions you're paying that you aren't using, and you can easily peel it back too. Yeah,
it's very easy to go back the other way, and that's part of it. It's a bit of a double-edged sword with this one. It's very easy to sign up for these subscriptions and do it at the time and think, I can always cut them. They're quite easy to do, but it's quite easy to forget, and I think a few of these companies are banking on the fact that people do. So touching on the next one again, that's unnecessary purchases. So I like to personally do a big clean out of everything that I've got every 6 months at least, sometimes even sooner, and just go through, get rid of anything that I'm not using, but I stay pretty lean in that way. And a great thing that I heard recently is when you're throwing out those things, which I know some people have trouble doing, especially if you've just spent $50 buying a shirt that you never even wore because you don't like it, just treat it like a lesson. So every time that you throw an item away, be like, I paid $50 to learn the lesson that I don't need that shirt again, or I don't need that item anymore.
Yeah, and without coming across too preachy, you know, like maybe I've lived an extravagant lifestyle, maybe I've lived a lifestyle that's like super basic, but either way, it hasn't really defined my happiness. And, you know, purchasing stuff is one of those things where, you know, it feels really, really good at the time, but most of it ends up in landfill at some point. And so, not saying don't go out there and do your thing, it's just be aware of the purchases and make them meaningful ones. The last one is just drinking. I've spent heaps of cash from the time I was 15 to about 30, you know, binge drinking and stuff like that. Again, not saying it for any sort of other reason except it's a pretty easy way to peel back some money. Me
personally, just to cut in, like, I know that when I went through a stage of obviously drinking a lot more in my 20s, and then when I cut that back, it was amazing, not just how much more time you have, but how much more time, I mean, sorry, not money, but time as well. Like, it's a great thing to cut back, not saying don't do it or live the lifestyle that we're living, but there's definitely a balance to that. And with everything that we've touched on, I think it really just comes down to a balance and prioritizing what things are actually important to you and what you're actually spending your time using that money towards.
The last thing that we didn't put in there, which is huge, and it's probably more up the top, is actually insurances. So life, super, you know, income protection, car insurances, home insurances or rental insurances. There is massive money to be saved across all of those things, probably 30% across the board if you know what you're doing. So again, another huge opportunity to save yourself, your family some money. So thank you so much. We've talked about a heap of different things. I truly believe that you can rip 30% of the costs out of your life without changing your lifestyle in any way, just by implementing these things. Maybe it's a case of just writing down the ones that apply to you and, you know, taking 2 or 3 hours to just go through that part of your life, call all of the relevant companies up and peel it back a little.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was going to be my recommendation too. Just get out there, get on the phone, make those phone calls, just find out what people are willing to offer you, and you might be surprised. At the very least, just do that, allocate some time to go through it and just have some fun with it. Like, I've recently read The Barefoot Investor, and he just said do these things at a set time, having a glass of wine or a dinner with your partner and go through these things together, and it's a great way to turn something that's a little bit dry or boring into a funner sort of occasion.
Cheers guys, really appreciate it today. Have a good one.
Thanks guys, see ya.